everyone, it's Margarita from People Jew Wanna Know podcast. I'm back with a solo episode as I wanted to take some time to reflect on my first 90 days running this podcast. I can't say that I had any crazy expectations for how this podcast would go, but I will say that looking back on the last 90 days, I could not have expected most of what ensued. I feel so lucky. I feel lucky that there are so many people out there who are willing to give me their time. I have listeners who give me almost an hour of their week when they tune in for every episode. I have people reaching out to me and sending me messages of support, and I have guests, people who I never dreamed of bringing on the podcast, agreeing to give me their time and imparting wisdom and inspiration, not only on me, but on all of you. And throughout all of this, I had set a goal with myself to offer the most diverse guests under the umbrella of one podcast, People Jew Wanna Know. Because I firmly believe that people Jew wanna know need to come from all sorts of walks of life. 90 days in, I can confidently say that I've stuck to that, and there's a lot more where this came from. Let's recap the types of material we covered. I sound like a teacher, but let's recap here, okay? We, of course, discussed Israel and anti-Semitism at length with many guests. We touched politics, technology, behavioral science, being a viral celebrity, food and restaurants, dating and relationships, comedy, religion. The list isn't ending anytime soon. My promise to all of you is that I will continue to push to expand our horizons together by bringing in even more diverse guests to the best of my abilities. And of course, you can always message me on Instagram at PeopleJewWannaKnow with suggestions. Which reminds me, if you haven't followed us yet, please do. Growing awareness of the podcast via social media, I'll be honest, is by far the hardest part of this whole thing. And honestly, tell your friends. Please tell your Jewish friends about this podcast. Getting more people to hear the stories of our guests is very important, especially right now. When you think about big podcasts, they're usually hosted by people who already have a large following. There's somebody famous, somebody well-known. I am not. I am a regular person with the passion, and I'd like to think grit, to find remarkable stories and share them with you. So I'm not really following the recipe of a typical podcast. I'm doing the whole thing in the inverse. If that's not Jewish, though, I don't know what is. Even if you look at how we run our Instagram, it's very different from a typical podcast. What's a typical reel or piece of content on a podcast Instagram account? It's a clip of a great moment from the episode with captions. I think that's very unoriginal, and literally every podcast account is doing that right now. So I tried to come up with different premises for my promotional reels that create a little bit of a mystique around the guest in the episode. Who is this? What are they about? You got to click the link and listen to find out. I think that this approach is a little unconventional to what people are used to, so it's also been a learning experience to try to warm up people to this concept as well. I'll be honest, I had to get very scrappy about the whole thing. I spend many hours a week messaging random people on the internet, asking them to check out the podcast. It's introduced me to people I now consider friends, and also to people that are very creepy. It's the internet, so that's only to be expected. With that said, I'm sharing all of this because I wanted to give you an inside scoop on what's up, and your continued support means a lot to me. And going back to my original point about guest diversity, I want to add one other thing. We all have our passions and interests and people we like to follow. Some of us aren't very interested in politics. Others are. Some of us love talking about dating and relationships. Others couldn't be bothered. I really encourage you to take a listen to the episodes that you wouldn't normally gravitate to. Pick a guest you wouldn't naturally be interested in. It will broaden your horizons and give you an appreciation for something you may have otherwise discounted. And the same can be true for our viewpoints on Israel. All of you roughly understand my position on Israel, as I've been pretty upfront about it throughout the podcast. I'm a Zionist. I support the right of Jewish self-determination and the entitlement to a Jewish nation-state in the land of Israel. The Jewish people are indigenous to this land. At the same time, I support the right of Palestinian self-determination and their entitlement to a nation-state. I do not, however, support Hamas, and I do not support a future where they continue to represent the Palestinian people. Most guests I've brought on so far either hold this viewpoint or something very close to that. And at the end of the day, all of us want peace and for the immediate and safe release of the hostages. and for violence to end as soon as it realistically can. Where I'm going with this is that not all Jews believe this, and maybe not all of my guests will believe this. And we need to be ready to hear those differing viewpoints and welcome them, because it makes us stronger thinkers. To be a Jew is to question, right? The word Israelite, to wrestle with God. I hope I can bring on this dynamic in the podcast as well. I also want to grow my relationship with all of you so that you trust that the guests I'm bringing on have something remarkable and interesting to say, even if you have no idea who they are. My goal is for you to think, oh, Margarita made this, so it's going to be good. It's something I'm working on hard as a host, and I wanted to touch on that more. In general, I've been thinking a lot about what kind of host I want to be, how I can continue to improve, etc. My friends always say, Marge, we want to see more of you in these episodes, more banter, more personality. This is hard. This is People Jew Want to Know podcast, not Marge Jew Want to Know podcast. I really try to make my guests the stars of these episodes and take an impartial, almost sometimes omniscient position. Obviously, I have some guests that I'm closer friends with, so that's where you see more of the banter and personality come through. However, when I bring on the very big guests, the ones that do a lot of public speaking engagements, I sometimes feel like they're a crutch for me as a host. I don't have to react very much or say very much because I know I'll bring them on and they'll say super interesting things for the duration of the episode. I want to stop using my guests as a crutch, and I want you to hear my thoughts and reactions to some of these things more often. I think there's a balance there to be struck. The other component of this is I bring on guests of different seniority, positions, age, etc. I have to carry myself with a certain decorum when I interview them. I can't shoot the shit with Rabbi Manis Friedman. I just can't. But all that is to say is that it is top of mind for me. So one of the compromises that I came up with is once in a while, I'll also do a check-in episode like this where it's just me. I guess we'll see how this episode performs and what your feedback is to see if I should continue doing this, but you let me know. And I can use these solo episodes to tell you about interesting behind-the-scenes moments, Jewish things in New York, so on and so forth. There are a couple of questions that I ask frequently to my guests that my friends requested I answer myself in this episode. The first question is, what do you wish more people knew about you that's not clear in the content you post? I tend to ask this question to the content creators and influencers I bring on because their persona online is often different from what they are in person. To this question, I'll say, I wish more people knew the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into the creation of this podcast. It seems very effortless when you hear the episode at the end, but that is not how it started out. You're about to get the real inside scoop here. My podcasting production process is quite different from how other podcasts do it. For one, I most always do a prep call with my guests before recording. I provide them with an interview guide of questions I'd like to ask them, and they can veto, add, or request changes to any questions on that guide. Once we record and I edit the episode, I send the episode to them for their review before it goes live. If they want any changes or edits made, they can request those and I make them no questions asked. Other podcasts just post the edited episode, and the guest kind of hears it with the rest of the general public. They don't necessarily get to hear it first or know what to expect. This process that I follow takes more time, but I do it because it demonstrates a certain level of respect to my guests who give me their time, energy, and support to do their episode. I want every guest to walk away feeling like they loved working with me. The only way to assure this happens is by giving them front row seats on what they can expect out of their episode and giving them a say over what is published about them beforehand. None of my guests are ever surprised. They know exactly what to expect, so they feel safe and confident doing the episodes. They can open up because ultimately they know I'm on their team and I want the episode to frame them positively. This is why I've been able to get some of the bigger guests on so early, because I demonstrate to them a component of trust. So that's what I would say people don't realize. Which brings me to the next set of questions my friends wanted me to address, which are best piece of feedback I've gotten and worst piece of feedback I've gotten about the podcast. In line with what I told you about my podcasting process, the best piece of feedback I got and continue to get is from the guests. I've had multiple guests tell me that this is the proudest they've been on a podcast and they loved how they sounded. Why? Because I do literally everything possible to make sure they like their episode. The worst piece of feedback I got, it's not even a piece of feedback, honestly, but I was involved in a PR crisis. Yes, little old me. Basically, as I mentioned, I will reach out to random accounts that are Jewish and ask them to check out the podcast on Instagram. One of the accounts I reached out to runs a Zionist page, but their position is honestly too far right for me, and it gave me the heebie-jeebies. That is a technical term. The woman behind the account followed my account. I followed her back, but she immediately started pitching herself for the podcast. In fact, she framed it as, I don't agree to do a lot of podcasts actually, and I'm very booked, but I have a good feeling about you and I'd love to come on. And I did what I always do, and I said, great, I'll put you on my list, and if something comes up where the opportunity is right, I'll let you know. Then, a few days later, I saw she unfollowed my account, so I unfollowed her as well. I figured she wasn't interested. She then messaged me after unfollowing me and was like, again, I'm very booked up, so please let me know when we can record, Margarita. As I said, I don't agree to do a lot of podcasts, but I'm willing to do yours. This is where I made a fatal flaw, folks. I responded to her, and my fatal flaw was I offered her an explanation of why I wasn't taking her as a guest. I said something like, hey, thanks so much for your interest. I don't have an Israel-centered podcast, so I'm careful with how much Zionist material I bring on. I'll let you know if I see it's a fit at some point. My thinking here is I don't want every episode to be about Israel or Zionism. I think it's exhausting, and I think there are enough podcasts dedicated to that already. I don't need to fill that space. I also felt weird about how persistent she was. I looked her up. To this day, friends, I can't find a single other podcast she has been on, but apparently she's booked and busy. So what do I know? Anyway, she screenshotted those two messages between her and I and posted them on her public account, essentially saying how disgusting that this creator is embarrassed of Zionism. This is what's wrong with Jews today. And random people on the internet I have never met started shitting on me and were like, reveal who this is, show her face, we need to know who these cowards are. I am not kidding. So I started responding to these comments one by one and being like, I'm right here. No need to reveal me. I'm a proud Zionist, but I have enough guests on my podcast with this type of material. So frankly, I did not want one more. And then I commented on there, like, how strange that you would put this out in a public forum. Anywho, I proceeded to send a voice note to her being like, hey, not sure what your issue is with me or why you would post this publicly, but I hope I addressed your concerns in my comments. Happy to set the record straight, and also, thanks for the free publicity. She then sent me a voice note back and was like, you are so unprofessional, you are a bitch. In the same sentence. The irony of this is just too good. And she said, your podcast isn't filling a niche at all, it offers nothing unique or valuable, and you are destined to fail. I don't wish you all the best. So I guess, folks, that's my negative piece of feedback. All that is to say that this creator has a small account, so this PR crisis died after a day and it reached nobody. I then did some digging on my side and I talked to some of the creators I trust, and they all said that this woman is crazy. She tries to expose other content creators, especially smaller ones. So I guess congratulations to her for her 10 seconds of fame that she could get off of my account, but it really didn't amount to anything, fortunately. She blocked me after sending me the voice note where she called me a bitch, but fear not, I have all the receipts. I learned 2 lessons from this experience. 1, I don't owe anyone an explanation for why I'm not taking them on. I don't even owe them a response, frankly, especially if they are weirdly persistent and pushy. And 2, I don't owe her 3 followers any explanation either. If you take 5 minutes to listen to my episodes, it's very apparent that I'm a proud Zionist. This whole situation is honestly somewhere between pathetic and laughable, and I learned early on that I just don't need to engage or stoop to the lowest common denominator to prove something. I have to thank my friends who helped me process the situation and realize that this would blow over in like a few hours, and they were so right. I couldn't even tell you, like, I'll have to dig up the screenshots to tell you what the account name of this person is because she blocked me, so I can't look her up on any of my accounts. But switching gears here altogether, I also wanted to share some of the most touching moments for me as a host doing this podcast, ones that I really didn't expect. I record a lot of episodes up front, so by the time that they're released, I don't remember very much about the episode or what was said. It's actually kind of fun because it gives me an opportunity to listen to it as if I'm an outsider. I find that the podcast feels very warm and almost comforting. And even if I bring on guests that don't share my viewpoint or your viewpoints, I'm committed to still making the whole thing feel warm. When I had Dan Ariely on, he talked about how stress can come from the fact that we don't know what the hell is going on. Actually, he didn't say that. That's the Margarita version of what he said, but you get the point. The ambiguity is really hard for us. Even in this time of increased ambiguity, I want our time together to feel comforting and warm, even if we listen to difficult things. I will say that by far, the thing that surprised me most about the last 90 days is how the guests perceive the podcast. Some of my guests are content creators or professionals in fields that don't deal with Judaism or Israel. As they go about their lives, they're not seen as Jewish first. And what I notice when they come on the podcast is this tremendous sense of relief. They're in an environment where they can just be themselves, be Jewish, be Israeli, and be unafraid to say what they want to say. As a host, I always tell my guests, especially those who are already doing extensive public speaking, there are the sound bites they have, their spiel, and then the stuff they're not used to speaking about that comes from the heart. And as a host, I know what's what because their tone, their demeanor is different, their body language. I study behavioral science. I'd like to think I'm good at picking up on some of those cues. And what I tell my guests is, as a good host, it's always my motivation to get them to speak from the heart as much as possible. Because that's where they really say something new that you can't find on another podcast or a video online. It's my job, of course, to give them the questions that equip them to feel comfortable in the first place. But that's my fundamental motivation. Especially for the guests that aren't known publicly as Jewish first, I could feel that doing their episode with People Jew Want to Know, they could speak from their heart and be unafraid. And it makes me emotional, honestly, just saying that out loud, because I can't believe I was able to do that for someone. I feel the relief from them. It's incredibly palpable. They feel seen. Like, I wish I could describe this better, but I don't even know that this is something I can quite put into words. There's a famous Russian comedy film, Mr. X, which I think in English is technically Mr. X, but for some reason, the English translation on the Wikipedia page still says Mr. X, like IKS, classic. There's an operetta in this film by the main character, Mr. X. I don't know why this is so funny to me. And at the end of it, he sings very, very sadly, "My fate is to always wear my mask." Okay, I don't know why I'm embarrassing myself singing this opera for you when I can just play you an excerpt. Всегда быть в маске, судьба. Coming back from my little tangent here, I can feel that some of my guests, especially those with large followings, feel like they have to wear a mask. They can't reveal their true essence or belief because their following will have such an outpouring of hate and criticism. Being on People Jew Want to Know gives them an opportunity to take off their masks. This is so special. It must feel so isolating and dissonant to know that you're wearing a mask and that you're stuck in that mask. This is perhaps my most powerful reflection in the last 90 days. As I continue with People Jew Want to Know, I also want to play around with the episode styles. Right now, I mostly do interview style episodes, as you know. After this 90-day episode, I'm going to play around with only using excerpts of certain interviews and still doing a good chunk of the narration and talking myself. My desire to try this stemmed from my experience interviewing a guest whose episode you will hear in the coming weeks, Professor Ada Tagar-Cohen. She's a professor of Jewish studies in Japan and the only university in Japan that offers a Jewish studies program. When I had recorded with her, because she could tell I knew a lot of Jewish history and biblical history, we were able to have an in-depth discussion. However, I realized that this may not be the case for a lot of listeners. So I want to use that episode to challenge myself to be able to convey that history in a clear, simple way to the listeners. I want to bring all of you along for the ride and also see if I can pull off being a People Jew Want to Know. Explaining some of these things is really hard. The other reflection I had on all of this, as mushy as it sounds, is the impact doing this podcast has had on my inner child. In the trailer, I talked about my desire to bring back some of that fun and delight and entertainment I did when I lived in Ukraine. In some sense, doing the podcast has allowed me to do that. I spend hours producing, editing, making reels, and I'll tell you, I really enjoy doing it. What all of you are hearing when the episodes release is hours of work to refine, cut down, dig out the most important parts for you. It's incredibly rewarding to see my ability to take what was and make it what you're hearing every week. I didn't know I could do it. It's a really awesome craft to learn, and I have a newfound appreciation for it. I spoke to a friend recently about the fact that we love nostalgia as people. We love feeling nostalgia. And in some sense, I want to recreate that for me and all of you using this podcast as well. The podcast is also an opportunity for me to remember my roots. Manis Friedman and I discussed the importance of each person finding their divine purpose. And as he said, it's not a purpose, it's the purpose. I'm telling you, I knew what my purpose was from the age of 4. Well, at the age of 4, I thought I was going to be a pop star, but I still knew what my purpose was then, just not the direct words for it. I always knew I wanted to be an entertainer. All of my childhood home videos are me performing, singing. I sang at my own birthday every year, and there's this video of me. I finish singing a song, and then I go, okay, everybody clap. And as an adult with a corporate career, with responsibilities and bills, and also the desire to have health insurance and a 401k, I wanted to find a way to reclaim that without having to take on such a big risk just yet. So this is it. This is People Drew Want to Know. Thanks for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People Drew Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram at People Drew Want to Know.